Hi, I'm Steve Feldman, MCA WorldCom, talking about the MAEs. Pretty much the same thing I said before, so if you've heard it, you can go to sleep again. At the city MAEs, there's really nothing new. We still have head-of-line blocking, still have congestion, still not growing except the NASA Ames facility where they're still adding new people as they have room. We're still trying to optimize things to accommodate traffic shifts on the existing customers. It basically requires constantly moving people around to different ports to try to minimize the congestion stuff. Lots of fun. Most of our engineering focus these days is really on the ATM. So we're not likely to see much more growth on the FIDs, at least we hope so. And of course, there's the obligatory Y2K. That's part of what I get to work on right now. Lots of fun. I had to do a chart a couple of weeks ago to give to USA Today because they wanted to do an article about the internet. So I went through my archives and found stats going back to May of '95. That's 4 years ago of the growth at May East and West. So you can see East is the purple line and the blue line is West. And they've kind of tracked each other pretty closely during that time. And you can see that for the most part, West has leveled off nicely as we stopped adding new customers. East has still managed to grow, which is kind of frightening. The ATM MAEs, that's really where, like I said, we're focusing on now. They've continued to grow. We now have 35 address delegations, which means customers who have placed orders, not necessarily connected yet. At West, we've hit half a gig peak utilization yesterday. We have 30 delegations at East and 10 in Dallas. Some issues, of course, never anything perfect. Our installation lead time sucks. Usually it's due to transmission capacity, it turns out these days. We just don't have enough transmission gear to bring everybody's access circuits in fast enough. We are working on that. I'll get to that in the next slide. PureMaker deployment isn't as fast as I would have liked. Again, I'll get to that. And of course, we have to plan for growth, assuming that this is successful, which so far it looks like it's going to be. We need to get ahead of the game and be ready for anticipated growth. PureMaker, that's the wonderful tool that lets people build the PVCs themselves without having to use humans. Nice in theory. It's being deployed more slowly than we'd like. We found a couple bugs, we found a couple operational issues, yada yada. Getting there, but wish it were faster. We're conducting trials on that at May West, or ATM West right now. We should have it up and running on East and Central in the next couple of weeks. And at this point, we're open to having more people play with it. If you are a customer and want to do that, drop me a line or drop your salesperson a line, or preferably both of us, and we'll set something up for you. Expansion plans at the ATM MAEs. Short term, we're just going to add some more of the switches we're using, and the facilities people tell us they're going to add more transmission capacity at both East and West. There's actually construction going on. At West, they're kicking people out of offices and going to kick us out of our lab pretty soon to put in a whole nother room for sonic gear. There actually is a new building close to the existing May East where they're putting a lot of new stuff, including colo space. And we expect to have at least some of our switches there at some point. Medium term, aside from the new colo at East, we're actually looking at replacing the existing switches with something that'll handle OC48. We expect to need that at least for the trunking fairly quickly. And longer term, like next year is long term, we're looking at being able to offer packet over SONET based services using MPLS probably as the mechanism for that. So we've been looking at some of the switches and starting to play, but that's a ways off. I've had a lot of people ask me why we don't do UBR service like the other ATM NAPs do. We've been focusing on doing fixed bandwidth allocations, making sure nothing's oversubscribed, which is what a subset of the customers want, but there's a whole other subset that really just wants to build things and go. So we've been looking at ways to deal with that. To do it correctly involves changing PureMaker, which, given the current speed, isn't going to happen real fast. Basic idea is that when you build a PVC, you could set it up to be UBR or ABR with whatever sets of parameters you like, and go from there, and not have to worry about real-time provisioning. There's a couple short-term things that we can do. One of them is just setting up a parallel full mesh of UBR PVCs and letting people use those if they want. Another possibility involves raising the minimum peak cell rate to something that would be useful for a set of smaller peers where you don't have to micromanage the bandwidth allocations. If anybody has opinions on that, I'd love to hear it. This is something we're probably going to try to implement fairly quickly, so I want to make a decision soon. Personally, I'm leaning toward the parallel full mesh is the simplest thing to do, but that's subject to change, and neither of them is very hard. Some contact information. That's my email address, feldman@mci.net. My information, info@may.net or www.may.net. This presentation will be on the web shortly. I apologize for not getting in advance, but since I was still working on it during lunch, it didn't seem quite right. And finally, I have a slide for Randy, in case he's listening, to address some of his points from yesterday. Well, ATM scales infinitely, unless you want to go fast. And we've never dropped a single packet at one of our MAEs. We dropped lots of them. And that's it. Thanks.